the scenario was here?
I'd be
Mr.
really
Ray,
good
or
at
Dr.
summarizing
Ray,
the unprepared board member.
Fantastic, fantastic.
So the unprepared board member is a dentist, and he's busy in his dental practice.
I don't remember that.
And he remembers that he has a board meeting, but he hasn't looked up the materials, and he tries to read something at lunch, but gets interrupted, and then he rushes off work and comes to the board meeting, and he has no idea what's going on. And there's a topic that's really important to him, and he hasn't prepared for it, and all of a sudden the board president says, let's go around the room and let's have each person share what their viewpoint is on this, and they start with him. And he's unprepared, and it's terrible habit number 13. Don't come unprepared to a board meeting.
Very good.
But the good news is that when lack of preparation becomes a habit, it's a problem.
That's right.
There you go.
So
That's
you're not
right.
there yet.
Right, one of the pieces here that kind of struck me under Plan B, it says, you don't know if you can ever look any of the other board members in the eye again. I thought, that's not that bad. This stuff happens every once in a while.
Life happens.
Jane, I think you're exactly right. You hit upon the key thing, right? If there's somebody who's routinely doing that, that's a problem. That's a problem, right? But if somebody has a super busy week and they just come and they don't quite have all the information, we can flex with that pretty well and give people what they need to make a good decision in most cases. I think we've experienced this with board members in the not too distant past, and it's hard when somebody routinely is not aware of what's going on. But boy, I sure haven't seen anything like that here. I have a lot of empathy for this as well. We're talking about these agenda items in some level of depth for a month typically before we get to them, so we kind of know what's going on. But when I was on the city council, we had big packets, or oftentimes even bigger than what we asked you to go through, and we'd get them Thursday nights, and boy, sometimes my weekend was conducive to being able to go through them thoroughly, and other times a little less so. I always tried to do that. I felt that was, one of my main responsibilities, but I get that sometimes life happens for sure. So, what are the lessons learned here?
Well, they didn't give you, the answer was no good.
Yeah.
There's no good options.
Right.
You're toast.
You should read the packet.
You should read the packet. That's right.
Yeah, do your homework.
Yeah, resign now. It should have been option 5.
Yeah, that you have a responsibility, and,
Oh,
to the public, and you should be prepared. And, I mean, it just goes back to what you can go and come into a classroom, and, if you don't do your homework, you didn't get it done, right?
Right.
And you get an F. I don't know. You don't pass.
Yeah, one of the things that said in here, and I had to look up to remind myself what state statute was around this. I think it was this one that said one of the options was to not attend. Right. And I think it mentioned, if I'm remembering correctly, if you do that enough, a lot of states say that you're not on the board anymore. Anybody know what our state statutes or policies are around that?
I'm guessing, kind of an educated guess, I think, but I think it's 3 in a row. If you miss 3 in a row, then you could be eligible for removal.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I looked up our state statute. It says if a board member is not participating, functioning in their role, can't remember, I'm paraphrasing, for 3 months. And clearly that would include attending meetings, but maybe not just attending meetings. It's kind of open-ended what that means, but you're exactly right. 3 months worth of just not doing it anymore, they're removed from office as a result of that. So I don't know what that looks like. Certainly, again, we've not had any issue with that at all, and I really appreciate the depth of preparation. So anything else we want to talk about there?
I think this one goes to one that we did last month also about abstaining, because
Yeah, fair enough.
sometimes board members have used "I'm not prepared" as a reason for an
Yeah.
abstention, which I don't think is a valid reason.
Amen.
You can ask to have it tabled, but if the board chooses to move on, then you move on. So I don't know how everybody else feels, but I don't feel that's a valid reason for an abstention.
I've seen in the past where boards, and to include this one, that not in recent years, but someone was not prepared, and they were supposed to vote for the evening, and they asked to table it so it can be more prepared. And I think that's not worthy of tabling at all, So kind of just shows that you should have done all of your homework in the first place. Yeah.
Right? If you don't get your bonus for being a board member, right?
There you go. Right.
So that was the first chapter. The second chapter we looked at was the opposite problem. And
Too much.
not being prepared enough was the first one. The one was being not necessarily overly prepared. The way that they framed it was doing too much homework. But what was the scenario here? Who recalls that one?
I can do this one.
Would you?
It
Yeah.
was, since
Of course.
Brett told me I do too much homework. He meant I come prepared, but this person took it upon themselves to write a policy, to do all of the research, to do all of the things, because it was an important topic to them, where it really wasn't their role to do so. Our role isn't to draft all the policy and do all the research. There's people who know more than we know, so.
Yeah,
And he felt like it was his role to do that.
absolutely. I was reading this. The first sentence was innocuous. You know, it's late Sunday night. You're still sitting in front of your computer. That happens to a lot of us all the time. Second sentence, though, I had a pencil in my hand. I just wrote out the side, yikes, no. You've worked for months on a draft policy concerning grounds management. I'm like, holy smokes, in what world is there a board member who is working on their own on a policy on grounds management?
The one that I underlined first was grounds management was the pillar of his campaign.
Yeah, that's a separate issue right there, isn't it?
Okay.
But, I mean, it's reasonable. They came up with something that you might have a personal passion around. Nothing
sure.
wrong with that. And there are ways to go about seeing your point of view, or point of view that's been shared with you multiple times by other people to move forward. But they're suggesting that, drafting your own policies, maybe not it. What does it say is maybe? Well, first of all, it says Plan B, and one of the questions asks, what's wrong with this approach? And it lists 3 things that are wrong with it. What, recall what those were?
Left the administration out of the loop,
Okay.
left fellow board members out of the loop, and left the public out of the loop.
Yeah, drafting something on your own kind of moves forward, too far forward in a lane that's maybe not even yours, right? So there's a couple of issues. And it's not that, your fellow board members will feel bad, maybe they will, or the administration's going to feel bad. That's not it. It's just that, the idea here is we get everybody's expertise and ideas, particularly with the expertise piece, right? If we were going to have a policy, if you were considering, alterations or a new policy regarding transportation, well, we got professionals that do that. The first people we're going to want to go to is them and say, what are your thoughts about this? The board has a vision for seeing this look different in the future. What do you think about that vision? And if either way, how would we get there from here? And then start to build around those discussions, right? Other thoughts about this? They had some of them when we started off. There were like 4 A, B, C, and D. You could choose one of these. This one had 10 options.
Yeah.
And where did it go with those 10 options? Do you recall?
I think the first 5 were listed as no-goes.
Yeah.
Don't do those things for sure. And the last 5 were actually reasonable options. Talk about your ideas with the superintendent beforehand and administrators. Provide elements of a plan instead of a final plan, which makes a lot of sense. Help the board reach consensus, be on a committee, or make sure there's public input time in anything you propose.
Absolutely. And the first 5 in and of themselves, I mean, they're not, like terrible. Don't do so much homework. No, that's not the idea behind this. Stay out of it is not what anybody's saying. Don't take a leadership role in this issue. That's not an appropriate approach. In many cases, you'd want to take a leadership role on something that you're passionate about. That's super cool, et cetera. There's a handful of things, but doing those aren't the right approach. There's modes for what we do and how we do them. And again, we're blessed to have a board, I think, that embraces those roles and does great things. One of the things I underline in short, the problem is not that you did too much homework, but rather that you seem to want to prevent others from doing their own homework as well. That's something that I'm maybe guilty of as a superintendent sometimes. So I underline that for myself and said, hey, I got to make sure I don't fall into that category with certain things. I don't want to come and say, here, we've got it all baked for you. All you got to do is say yes, and we're moving on. I want to take a similar approach in terms of a collaborative decision making. So, any other thoughts or ideas around that one?
The one line that I underlined that I really thought was pretty sharp, but it says, don't start with the product, but follow the process.
Yeah.
And as a board member, it's so important, because if you, like what in this example, we started with, with the
Products.
end state.
Yep.
And then, but if it would have followed it, it would have gotten everybody else involved. And we kind of do that, I think, in business sometimes. You just get driven and you want the end state, but holy cow, who did you leave out? And then it kind of crumbles. So,
Yeah,
pretty,
so
pretty neat line.
the key message, don't not share your ideas. Don't not take leadership on things, et cetera. That's why you were, I mean, probably the primary reason, right, that you were elected is for your ideas and taking leadership roles on moving us in positive directions, but yeah, doing it in the process. The superintendent's lessons here, I thought were salient, but difficult potentially. It says dealing with overzealous board members is particularly challenging for superintendents. I've had a little bit of experience with that so far. Currently, I don't get a lot of practice with that, so that's good. If she, in this case, the superintendent, the mythical superintendent is a lady, if she feels she has appropriate rapport, Debbie could talk directly with the offending board member. It reminded me of how important it is to have a positive relationship with each person on the board. I've tried to do that whether I have a natural affinity for friendship toward that person or whether I don't. I've tried to do that over the last few years. That's, I think, worked to our benefit. And then the other thing I underlined, the long-term solution is to make sure the board has appropriate training and has reached agreement on board superintendent relations. And I just feel like we're in a good place with that. And I appreciate everything that you do. So that's the end of the second of 3 sections in our book.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank all of you.
we've got a few minutes here. I'd like to do a coin presentation here. And we've got two coin recipients tonight. One is Kirk Eichenbach, is that right? Eichenbach. And then Patricia Legler. Yes. All right. And Kim Barker is the nominee or nominator.
Nominator?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think we have some slides here. And do you want to describe this, Kirk or Kim?
Let him describe it, he's the one who made it.
This is super cool.
Kirk, if
He
you
made
want to
it.
get up to the microphone, just so that everybody, thank you.
So when I first found out there was some wood laying around, I talked to Chris and he said, yeah, you know, we're gonna bring it here, you can take some. So they were 16 foot long, so I had to cut them up and put them in the back of my truck, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I'm like sitting in my shop going, So I'm like, I make flags, you know, I'm a woodworker, you know, hobby, and I decided to make a couple flags. And it wasn't, you know, once I planed it and got all the gum off, it went pretty well. I'm sure some of the gum was pretty old. Yeah. So, and then I had a little saying on the bottom, and I got a CNC machine, so it was pretty easy to do. So,
And Kirk, am I remembering correctly? One of these is at least one of them is hanging in Mile High in the
I think
office there.
I think the big one's gonna go in
Yeah.
the gymnasium, and the little one I think is in the principal's office maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Nice.
I was gonna make a paddle. Which is, you know, Board of Education. Board of I might.
Not too late.
I think one of the teachers asked for one. So,
Any idea how old those bleachers are?
40 some years maybe, Chris said, 40, 50?
Oh, of those
Were they
bleachers?
original to that building?
I think so.
they probably were.
I think-
39
Really?
was when it was built.
By the smell of the wood when I was cutting it, yeah, I
I
think.
think the auxiliary's gotta be close, and the main
Yeah.
gym,
Right.
who are probably maybe a little older, but they're both replaced, so.
Yeah, that's very cool. Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you so
Kirk,
much.
this is really neat. It
Thank
just
you.
adds
That is
something
so
neat to the
neat.
school and ties together kind of our history of
Mhm.
the school with where we're going in the future and how we
Sure.
feel about our country. When I first saw it, I walked into Ashley Tetro, she's the principal. Ashley Tetro's office, I said, "That's super cool, where'd you get that?" She said, "You haven't heard?" I said, "No." I said, "One of our bus drivers is a woodworker. He took some of our old wood from the bleachers and made this." I'm like, "That is the best thing I've heard all day.
Yeah.
I love it."
I'll probably think of something else. I mean, I got plenty of the wood left, so.
That's
Okay,
great.
Nice.
very cool.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
Yeah.
Love it.
And then Patricia?
Patty?
Yeah.
I'll talk for you.
All right.
I'll talk for you. I want to acknowledge not only Kirk, but Patty too. Patty does a lot of our training program for all of our bus drivers. She has I gave her my ideas of what I was seeing from disgruntled people coming in for training and told her this is what my vision is. Let's get this on board, and Patty's just taken off with it. I can't thank her enough. She's now even been acknowledged by the Motor Vehicle Department. When we do our third-party testing, they have actually asked her to help other schools with the process of what we're doing, because our system is working. So I'm really happy with what Patty's done for our team. And the training, as you can see, we just did a backing training in this picture where they had to go behind or in between PVC pipe with tennis balls on the end. It was a backing strategy to show them what their tail swing would do. Very eye-opening to a lot of drivers. So that was something that she come up with and created herself. So,
Very
yes.
Great job, Patty.
Great job.
Thank you.
We can't walk away with all of those
Without their little coin.
amazing accomplishments. So Patty, we'd just like to present you with our PUSD governing board coin.
Thank you.
For all that you've done.
Thank you.
And continue to do. All right, Kirk. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Can I just chime in super quick? So this is emblematic, I think, I think there's a really positive culture that's been established in our transportation department. There's a lot of stability and continuity. Kim has just brought some great leadership, and she's surrounded herself with other terrific leaders and people who are here for the kids and really have a heart for what we're trying to do in our district, and that's pretty neat. It's been an area that in past years has been a constant struggle to get all the arrows pointing in the same direction. I just feel like we're in a good spot there, and kudos to all of you for what you do. It's like literally we could not do what we do in our schools without you starting the day off for a good share. We're about a third of our kids every day get to school on our school buses, and it's a huge part of what we do.
Sports.
Need to get
Thanks,
more
guys.
kids on it.
Thank you. Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to start our regular board meeting. You're welcome to stay for the next 4 hours.
They're pretty exciting.
Yes, you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, man.
Wow.
3:30.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Patty, thanks. Kim, thanks. Kirk, thank you.
All right. All right, so we'll start our regular board meeting. Welcome, everybody, to the August 5th PUSD regular board meeting or governing board meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Jen, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance
All right, move on to item 3, approval of the agenda. Take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move that we approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second it.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Approval of minutes. Consider approving the minutes from the study session, book study, and regular study and voting session meeting of July 1st, 2025. Can we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Item 5A, Prescott Protect update. Andy.
Thank you. Permission to approach the bench?
Anytime.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate the opportunity to come in and present a little bit here. We have a couple new faces. Also, good to see my boats getting put to good use. But anyway, that's this. Sorry. No, anyway. So I thought it'd be best to kind of do a where we were, where we are, and where we're headed with the Prescott Protect volunteer program. Where we were, as far as safety and security in the district, we had an SRO, Officer Holmes. We had single point entry at the high school. Very good things. However, we had no PD support at any of the lower elementary schools. We didn't have anybody over at Granite. We didn't have anybody over at Mile High. With Missy Townsend and Adam and Clark, we initiated the launch of a community-based volunteer program called Prescott Protect to basically augment the expanding safety measures that were taking place or that were planned district-wide. Folds nicely into what the district is working hard to do, and I'll expand on that a little bit. So that's just a little bit of the background. The emphasis was, our community members who may have some experience in law enforcement or military, but also just who are interested in keeping an eye out on the kids, for the kids, and the teachers that work there. So where we are, our pilot program started in the spring of '23 over at the high school, and we worked into PHS and Mile High Middle School during the 23-24 school year, and we were able to provide about 243 hours of additional community support to both, of course, their Officer Holmes at the high school, and I was at the time Officer Andrew Lovin over at Mile High. So we worked together with those two folks, in addition to the existing security framework that is over at the high school, pretty robust. And then the Mile High, of course, Ashley's taken a real forward-facing approach to really augmenting what's going on over there from a security standpoint. Where we are headed, so just to back up, so the 24-25 school year, we had a few less volunteers, but overall we're close to 400 hours of additional community volunteers that are in the schools and kind of helping out, which is pretty good. I mean, it'd be awesome if it was more, but that's a good start. It's a good place to start in the two schools. So I just ran into Karen Hughes, who's principal over at Granite Mountain, as I was dropping my son off, and we kind of had an exchange. So we're looking forward to starting over there. This school year, we have a volunteer already set up over there who's ready to go, and we have a new SRO full-time who I have not met yet, but I know you all are probably familiar, Officer Astorga from the Prescott Police Department, who's going to be over there full-time. And then our volunteer and any other volunteers we have will work kind of with him. And Karen was kind of excited about that prospect of just not having to, that we could kind of coordinate directly with the SRO on site and then, kind of work together to just kind of augment. You probably all know this, the layout of Granite and Abaya Judd kind of facilitates this 2-for-1 deal over there. So our hope is, hey, if we can kind of get over there and assist at Granite, it'd be perimeter walks and just an extra set of eyes and a radio in Abaya Judd as well. So that would be very cool.
That's great.
How this fits, I just want to make a quick note, how this fits into the greater safety and security emphasis. I also just need to note that this is outside what I'm about to kind of talk about is outside the purview of Prescott Protect. That's a volunteer program that I help coordinate. But in doing so, I've had the opportunity to speak with our federal programs director, Jamie Buna, and of course Clark, who working tremendously hard to secure some awesome grants for what's going on here in the district. Just briefly, there's 3 main grants. There's a school safety program continuation grant, which you can see on your sheet, a Stronger Connections grant, and then a school safety program mini grant. A note of correction, we are actually in this is the 3rd year, it says year 2, but technically we completed year 2 of those 3-year grants. So we're going into the 3rd year. They're already working hard to secure more grant funding. It's not secured yet, but the hope is that will be there. The number 3 item, the school safety program mini grant, has been used to, of course, fund the full-time SRO at Granite Mountain, in addition to the social worker at Mile High. And Clark, are we do we have one over there full-time? Do you know? Great.
We do,
So
yep.
this sheet needs to be updated. But anyway, so that's great. Because of course the mental health side of this is a big part, and being involved in the schools and trying to catch kids that are having trouble, and kind of acknowledging that, or kind of identifying that and getting them services, ahead of time. So you can see the numbers. This is all tremendous. I mean, we go from having one SRO district-wide 2 years ago to having 3 full-time SROs. In addition to, at all the lower elementary schools, we have kind of a revolving shift, 4-hour shift work of various officers from PD, from Prescott PD, Chino Valley PD. I think we have the Sheriff's Department involved that will sign up for just extra shifts, and then it's up to the individual administrators at those schools to kind of delineate when those shifts would be best utilized. Could be before school, could be kind of that after school time, could be a variety. But I can tell you, just as a parent from the community, we're getting really good feedback of other schools. I have several friends at Lincoln who just love seeing that presence there. I shared this with Clark and Jamie. I walked the halls last year. I mean, it just was lined with the little kids that drew pictures and thank you notes to the officers who are out there, and that's awesome. I mean, that was 2 years ago. And this is not a testament to Prescott Protect. I'm just kind of reflecting and kind of giving the district here a pat on the back, because this is 2 years ago we had this, now we have this, and it's awesome. So I would say in conclusion, well, I'll just back up one more thing. So I think that those, I work pretty closely. I volunteered once a week over at Mile High, and I work pretty closely with Officer Lovin, and I will say that having him there was amazing, right? There's 2 specific examples. There's probably 100 more, but I can give you 2. There was one instance where there was a Facebook threat or something made, and of course, I had friends that contacted me because I have connection there and I was the volunteer there. I reached out directly to Officer Lovin, who had already went to the person's house, talked with the parents, kind of diffused the whole situation. So you have to understand that this Officer Lovin had been moving faster than the Mile High rumor mill, which is pretty fast, and I was able to communicate with parents, and then it worked its way around the chain. So that was an example. Another example is, of course, the standoff that was over at the apartments across the street, which is very close proximity to Mile High, of course, being downtown, and he was able to handle that seamlessly with the lockdown, and he's right there. It was right there. It was perfect. Rather than having this kind of disjointed communication, I'm sure previous communication with the PD was great, but having somebody there on site who knows the kids was even better, in my opinion. So, in conclusion, I really feel as a community we should expect this level of attention to be paid to the safety and security of the students, the teachers, the people that work in our schools. I also think it's important as parents that we should know that our district is working very hard constantly to ensure this dynamic objective is attained. And I encourage the board to continue this effort, and I encourage the community to continue to support it however we can, if that is in Prescott Protect or if that's however that looks. It's a group effort, it's a community effort, and there's plenty of opportunities to get involved. So yeah, thank you. Any questions on any of that?
I had one quick one. You said you have fewer volunteers this past year than the first year?
I'm sorry,
But-
Jane, what was it?
Sorry, I believe I heard you say you had fewer volunteers this past year, but more hours given.
We had, the first year, we had 2 pretty steady faces over at PHS.
Okay,
And one of those, their kids left the high school. So then we lost that. And so the first part of the year, we didn't have him over there. And then I think Jimmy came second semester. So second semester, we kind of replaced that.
Okay.
Ours dipped slightly. We had another full-time gentleman over at Mile High And he, as would be, people may come and go, or they're able to volunteer for a little bit and life changes and they can't. So we had a few less hours over at Mile High. So, but we do also intentionally, by nature of this program, there is some independence. So we are pretty careful kind of about how we vet and who, it's not just whoever wants to come in, so that kind of thing. We want to make sure there's positive interactions with both the staff and the kids if that occurs.
Just want to say thank you for what you're doing. I think I've had a couple interactions with the folks at PHS, and it's just great to see the community out seeing what our schools are like and actually being there. I think it makes their hearts and minds grow a little bit, every time somebody's out there. So we appreciate you being involved in putting this together.
I think that's I reached out to Matt, Dean, and Missy just ahead of this. I was giving a little presentation. Do you folks have anything good or bad about the volunteer program? And Matt's comment was just, it's always good to have an extra set of eyes on a radio.
Yeah.
And Missy's was, I thought, great in the sense that it was really a 30,000-foot view in the sense that she said, as long as I'm going to quote it because she just said, when community members are invested with their time in our schools, it only makes us better.
Yeah.
So, I think that is at the heart of this whole thing, too.
Yeah,
And is
exactly.
Heart of what you said, Andy, so thank you.
I think it's important our community knows this is even happening. I think there's a lot that have no idea the amount of time that's invested in helping our schools be safe from volunteers and people like you who arrange volunteers. I think it's incredible. So thank you very much for doing it.
And this is, I work with the individual administrators to kind of send information out to the schools to try to get more volunteers. So we're kind of working on that. But I can't underscore the effort that's gone into these grants by Jamie, by Clark. This is big. This is a tremendous, I know this is recorded and other people view this and things, so I really want people to know how much effort is going into this, and the fruit of that effort is obvious. If you're in the schools, you will see police presence there, and that's one part of it. That's one tenet of school safety, I know, but it's a very visible part, and I think it's an important part, and it's also an expensive part. So, and at the end of the day, all this stuff costs money to do. So I think that it's just important that the community knows that that's happening. So, good on you all.
I think it's also so key to have our kids around police officers and learning that they can trust police officers, because I think a lot of kids have a different perspective about what police do, and they have some fear around police officers and things, and they actually have formed relationships with our police officers, and it's pretty cool to watch. And that basketball game where they went over to crowd control before the game ended, and they just stood there, and those kids respect him so much that they knew Officer Holmes is here for us, for our protection too. It was good. I was so impressed. Love it.
And that respect comes from connection. So to go back to that Facebook, Officer Lovin was able to speak with that student, and he knew that student. There was a familiarity there, and it's not just this foreign, police officer, and then there's fear or whatever else emotionally occurs. But that, like you said, that's a great example. They know Holmes, they know he's there to help, but they're gonna listen to him too. So I think it's great.
Yeah. So good.
Andy, again, thanks for stepping up, and taking this initiative. One, you're a husband, you're a father of students, and it's important to remember that you're also keeping our staff safe, as well as our kids, and it's no small feat what you've done. And any time that we can announce that there are different layers of security in our schools, it's a deterrent to anybody that may possibly think to do something harmful to our staff or kids. And so by you stepping up, it just adds an additional layer, a voice for if there may be something coming at us that we don't know. So we appreciate it, and we appreciate all the efforts that you've done.
And my wife works, my wife works for the district also, so that's
right.
some of you may know her, but, so I have, full family there. Thank you all, appreciate it.
Can I make a
Thank
quick
you.
comment, if that's all right? So we've got a lot of great community partners and advocates in the community for PUSD. I don't know if we've got a better one than Andy Stickle. He's there doing all kinds of things for us. And this is just one example of his heart and how he's brought people together. There's a lot of effort on his part. He's kind of downplaying all the organization on his part. He's met with us multiple times. His question is always, how can we help? How can we make it better? How can we make it safer? And I love that. And thanks for pointing out the other efforts that we're making as well. But what you and your crew do to augment our safety is meaningful, not just in terms of the actual ways that we've talked about, extra eyes, radio, communication, et cetera, but just the feel that there's people in the community that have our back is huge. Thank you for what you do. Sure appreciate you, man.
Yeah, I think it's an attitude, it's an attitude, it's an attitude of just care and concern, so it's a group effort for sure. Thanks, Clark.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Eddie.
much. That was great.
Moving on to item 6A, summary of current events. Mr. Tenney.
Okay. Well, I've got goosebumps. That was,
Do you have goosebumps?
I appreciate you. Yeah. So the school year is off to a great start. I've talked to the principals, and I've heard 5 different versions of we've never had a smoother start to the year. That's fantastic. I want to knock on wood a little bit. We're still kind of in the start, so we have to get past that. I'd love to, a month from now, be able to say the same thing. I hope that'll be the case. It's been really good in all of our schools in most ways. Little bumps like everywhere, right? Traffic's a little sticky as everybody's kind of learning what's what, and some parents say, I'll just send you on we'll drop you off the first few days before we start the bus thing, and so we have half again as many people as usual driving, et cetera, but it's been a really good start. I've got some comments from principals I'll share in just a moment, but a couple of different things. We've talked about, I've reported to you, some of you were able to stop by. We had our new staff orientation. What's it been, 2 weeks ago, Kelsey? Do you mind kind of chiming in and sharing a little bit about this? She's not going to mention this, but I can't stop the flow of people telling me this was fantastic. Are you going to mention kind of what some of the feedback you've had?
Go for it.
If you don't, I will. Why don't you go ahead, and I'll see if there's anything that, if you're downplaying anything about how awesome you are, I'll augment. How's that?
Okay. So new teacher or new staff orientation, I guess I should say, is kind of our Super Bowl week we call every year, because there's so much that goes into it, and there's so much planning and people and things that we really want to set our new staff off on the right foot. And so we've refined that process and refined it, but we have all of our staff join us for 4 mornings from about 8 to noon each day, and we have a variety of topics that we talk about. But this year, I cannot speak highly enough about the group of professionals we had in that room. They were energetic, and they were funny, and they were passionate, and their heart is in this for the kids. So we could not have had a better group of people joining our team. So I'm excited about that. I could not have done any of that without our instructional coaches. They really are the magic behind that week, and the support that they offer our teachers and our principals as we get them started. The feedback that we got was extremely great. I mean, I couldn't have asked for better. They felt supported, they felt welcomed, they felt like they had enough time to get things done so that they were on the right foot when all staff came back, because we know that turns into a fast and furious week as well. But I think they were ready. They were a great group. They're one of the best I think we've worked with so far as a whole.
Going around and talking with our new teachers, I've been to each classroom the first few days of school, and especially tried to spend a couple minutes with the new folks. I've heard several versions of this from people who had been in other districts. I talked with one person who, I think this is their 4th district they've been in over their career, and they said, our onboarding was fabulous. I've never seen anything like that. Never said. It's obvious that there's people in this district who know what they're doing. They care. They're reaching out. The time I had with my principal was great. The time we had with everybody in our all staff onboarding was terrific. The time you gave me to be in my room and prepare for the school year, I love this place already. What a great first impression Kelsey and her team made. Those photos there, the top is our group of new certified staff. You can see there's about 28, 30 folks there, including physical therapists and some folks like that, but mostly teachers. up there. I think we've got, what, 28, 29 new teachers, which is, again, we've talked about our turnover rate. I think it's 13%, which is about half of what you'll find in other parts of Arizona. And pretty healthy, frankly, because about half of the folks who moved on before were people who decided to retire. We don't want to keep people the rest of their life. There's actually 2 or 3 folks as well that we said, maybe it's time for you to find something else. So, we're real pleased with the level of turnover that we had, and like Kelsey said, the new folks we brought in. I mean, we kind of feel this way every year, maybe, but this is a pretty special group, I think.
I also want to give a huge shout out to our community partners too, who additionally welcomed them. So our first morning, we had coffee for them from Method Coffee. We had, if you've never been to Parlor Donuts, you got to look. This is my first time I glanced at them, and man, I think they were intimidating because they're so fancy and pretty. But we had donuts from Parlor Donuts. We had the Chamber of Commerce came with goodie bags, not just 1, but 2 bags for each of our new staff of just all kinds of swag. And then we had Chick-fil-A that afternoon bring them lunch. Obviously brought the cow with them as well.
Nice.
And they gave them a free gift card for an additional meal at some point. So they just walked out of there feeling welcomed and a little spoiled and all of those good things. So we've got a great community who's supporting our teachers and our staff.
Yeah, a lot of people, man, I'm glad I'm in Prescott.
Yep.
This is awesome. I've done this a lot of places. I've never felt this way about it. The bottom photo is Kelsey's instructional coaches and some of our other administrators and people who were instrumental in pulling this all off for us. So you can see we almost had a one-to-one correlation between people who were making it happen and people for whom it was happening. It's pretty neat.
I would just possibly add that at the teacher's closet on Friday, we invited the new teachers to come in. We had over 20 there. I don't remember the exact number, but I was overwhelmed. It was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
They were excited. They were happy. They couldn't believe that we offered a service like that. That the other districts they had worked at before never did anything like this, and it was just so heartwarming.
Jane, I'm so sorry I forgot that. But
Oh,
yes,
no, that's okay.
Teacher's Closet was instrumental in this as well. So Paul came that first day and we walked everybody through the Teacher's Closet so they knew where it was, they knew what kind of supplies were there. And then when they went back to their classroom that afternoon, they started to go, okay, what do I have? What do I need? And when I saw Paul afterwards, he said it was like little kids in a candy store that afternoon, that it was so inspiring and they were so excited to have that for them. So.
And then Friday, you were there for them to come back and actually go
shopping.
through. I thought
Yeah.
kind of doing that in a 2-stage method was really great.
I thought it worked out really well. They were prepared to shop.
Yes.
Teachers
And we were
came through and
prepared to
they're
give
like,
them.
now what can we have? And we said, whatever you need for your kids. And I'm like, are you serious? Wow. It was pretty neat. Okay. And then it's the school year starting, like we say. We've got back to school nights. I'll let you kind of look at those times. If you want to jot any of those down on your own personal calendars, you're welcome to. Oh, great. Okay. Super. Sarah will make sure that you've got all of those times, but we'll try to be at as many of those as we can. And just kind of, it's a great time to interact and interface with parents and kids who are excited to be where they're at. I asked all of our principals, I won't go into depth here because just for time's sake, but I asked all of our principals, hey, what are a couple of great things about the start of the school year for you? And I had everything from, the communication between staff and leaders has been super positive. Our new teachers are crushing it, is what I heard from a couple of folks. A lot of us, you remember we did some shuffling around with leadership in the district 3 years ago. And so now we're, I guess, 2.5 years ago, whatever it's been. So a lot of us are in year 3 of our roles. And you probably have experienced in your life, year 3 of something big is a really good year. It's okay, made it through the survival year, made it through them learning what the pieces are, and now where do we go next? It's kind of how do we level up, and we had some people mention that. Our Genesis, our PSD Everywhere program director mentioned that she's got as many kids online as she's ever had. Our Genesis program had the most graduates that they've ever had this last year. That's our dropout prevention program. 45 kids graduated high school through the Genesis program last year. We've had as few as like a dozen in past years, so that's pretty neat. And the total number of kids enrolled right now is 47. So we had almost as many kids graduate as we currently have enrolled. That's pretty neat. I was proud to hear that. Less teacher stress is one of the things that I heard from a couple of different folks, and their SPED staff and their school being revamped, and happy and ready to go. Those were things I know are continual concerns for us. And so hearing that feedback from principals was meaningful to me. So I want to share that with you. And then I just thought I'd share this with you as well. So I was at Shauna Hodavance's math intervention class. I can't remember when it was. It was either yesterday or Friday. And this was outside her door, and I thought that's super cute. And it's kind of emblematic of a couple of things. We have people, who say, I'm not a math person, I can't do that or whatever. And we just say, hey, everybody can do this. And there's her two-step process for being a math person, which I loved. Kind of lighthearted and whatnot, which I think is emblematic of the way that we try to approach things in our schools. But also, we're going to do it. Everybody does this. We're jumping in. Pretty neat to see that happen. Already working with kids at where they're at and where they need to be next. So I think that's what I got.
All right. Okay, moving on to item 6A2, governing board members. Brett?
Yes, thank you. I went to Granite Mountain's Meet the Teacher Night on, I think that was on the 29th of July. And I felt like it was well organized. I felt like there was a good vibe there. The culture was good. A lot of excited little ones moving up to upper elementary school. And then 2 days later, I was there for the first day of school. Had a neat experience. Clark was there, and he said, hey, why don't you come visit some classes with me? And this is just, the kids have been in 5th grade for 5 minutes. And Clark walks
Big
in
guys.
with me, and it was interesting. The 5th graders were like deer in headlights. They looked a little nervous, and but it was fun to meet the teachers, to be with Clark, we had, usually when Clark walks into a classroom, he's like a rock star. The kids are like, Mr. Teddy! And, it was a little different than I've seen in the past, but it was fun. I was impressed with Clark's leadership and the way that he cares for the teachers. And as I was walking back to my car to make it to my 9 o'clock patient, I saw Mr. Binder, and he was making the rounds too on the first day of school, and he was headed into Abaya Judd. And I just was real impressed. Felt like our schools are in good hands. Our leadership team is second to none. So that was a good experience for me. And I was surprised at how many of the teachers I had never met. A lot of them were new introductions to me, and so I appreciate that and look forward to learning more names and getting to build relationships with the boots on the ground, the ones that make the difference. And I appreciated their efforts, and they looked prepared and ready to go, and inviting and helping out those, especially the vulnerable 5th graders, which is fun. And then the last thing I have to report is the Distinguished Alumni Award page is up and running. Thank you to Sarah Torres for that. It's professional. It has all of our awardees there with their pictures and a little bio. And if you're interested in checking that out, you go to the Prescott High School page, you go to the alumni button at the top, and then you click on Distinguished Alumni Award. And very professionally done. So thank you.
I'll just say Sarah has augmented that even further. There's a link, just like you said. There's also one from the district homepage as well that's got all of that same stuff, plus the yearbooks that Missy and her crew got online, and the Hall of Fame, and our Facebook page for alumni. So we're trying to find a good landing spot and sort of build that aspect of our support community.
I think it's very helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you for your efforts.
Jen?
I was able to go to the day 1 of the new teacher training, which was pretty amazing to see, and very impressive with your group of coaches and just the people that are involved. So good. And Stan's video was played of the history of PUSD.
No way.
And I don't think I've ever seen it before. I apparently missed whatever Education Foundation event that occurred at. And so anyway, it was really cool. And I think it's something that is really neat to share about our schools and the impact they've had on our community for a very, very long time.
We've linked that from Sarah's webpage as well.
Wow. Well, it's very impressive. Nice job
Thanks.
narrating.
It's fun doing it.
Yeah. And this month I got to be on the radio with Clark.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And it was good. We had lots of great things to talk about.
That's right. Andy?
I'm kind of disconnected. I haven't been around for a month, so I've been traveling coast to coast with my family. So nothing really that I've done with the schools except just kind of on a personal note. Claire and my daughter wanted to go to the high school and run on the track and take her daughter out to run and see her. And she said, I haven't sprinted in a long time, so I want to go sprint. And she ran on the new track, which she didn't have in high school, and she ran a 29.75 200-meter dash. So I was like, she said, I hope I can get under 40. And she was under 30. So
This is post
that was really cool.
after having a baby?
Yeah, this is after having a baby. So I was like,
And presumably
Pretty
she hasn't been
impressed.
training.
no, she hasn't been training. So I was pretty impressed. But I guess my point is the facilities are amazing. And my granddaughter loved running on the field and playing in the grass, the fake grass and the track. And our facilities people are doing such a good job, especially this dry summer. I mean, things look really good when I've been around at the school. So just a shout out to them too.
Yeah, a lot of coordination and effort and planning over many years to have what we have there, and our folks at the high school and our maintenance folks as well just do a great job of keeping it up. And we initially anticipated 8 years out of that, and it's been already 8, 9, and we're going to stretch it out further because of the maintenance that we've done and save the district money to put it into other places.
And all of the schools look really good. Things look really in top shape, so really happy with that.
Jane?
I was actually out of town most of the month of July as well, but I did stop in on last Tuesday, a week ago, to Abaya Judd. Spent a couple hours just walking around, touching base with all the teachers. Some of the moms were there too, and just connecting with everyone and making sure they have what they needed. And I experienced nothing but excitement, and rooms ready to go and teachers ready to go, and the school looked great, and I was proud to be part of it.
Great. Well, I didn't do a lot of back-to-school activities, but hopefully I'll get out to the teacher nights, or parent-teacher nights. I do want to mention we did lose a longtime teacher, Mr. Jack Orr, here just over a week ago, and I think we were in the same algebra class, right, Brett? With him, I feel like it. You didn't have Jack Orr.
I had him for algebra too.
And Mr. Algebra, or what was
Algebra Man.
Algebra Man.
Yep.
Like, oh my gosh, amazing teacher, amazing laugh, coach. Just, obviously there was just an article on 3 generations of Orrs teaching in PUSD, and these are tough losses with that we've had lately with some longtime educators, but he's another one, and he's a legend in his own time. So we'll miss you, Jack, and thanks for all you've done for Prescott and the community and the Forest Service and everything that you did throughout your life. So, item 6B, community comments shared with governing board members. You want to start, Brett?
Sure. We did have one letter come in, so we all got this letter. I'll just, since I'm first, I'll just summarize some of the points of concern. There was the elimination of morning before recess at Abaya Judd Elementary School. This mother and volunteer in our schools was concerned with the length of the school day, the class sizes, and overburdened teachers. And I reached out to her because the principal there has reached out and sent an email, which I had seen. So I wanted to know if her concerns were satisfied, and she said they were not satisfied. And she talked a little bit more about increased recess duties. And in her email, she said that teachers can't drink water during the daytime because there's no time to use the bathroom. And so something I think might be helpful to look into with, we probably already have some teacher surveys or satisfaction surveys, I imagine. And that might be nice to share with the board members. So we have a better understanding. Is this a one parent concern, or is this a global concern that we need to look into? And that's the only formal public comment that I had this month.
Same.
Same. I would just say one note I made is that I don't think the expectation of duty, recess duty, is a singular thing to Prescott. And this isn't to say that just because other districts do it doesn't mean it's right for us, but we also have to look at the resources we have available. And I would love to have a full staff that could manage all of those extra duties and keep our teachers out of that. That's just not realistic. And so I don't want to come across as saying just because other districts do this that it's right for Prescott to do it, but I also think we have to take the whole picture into account here and know that we can do what we can do with the resources we have, and teachers at most other schools are doing recess bus duty, before school, after school, lunch, everything, and even professionals that are not teachers but at higher levels in the school are doing it. So I can sympathize, but I also know that we're in a spot. This is what we have to do. So.
The only thing I reiterated with her was that in the question she had about before recess, when kids get to school, going to the classrooms as well, I do know that the BioJed teacher leadership team last year had decided to go in this direction before Dr. Bray came online, and I feel like she has made a decision to take a look, see how it's going, and we'll reevaluate in December. And I mentioned that to the mom, and I didn't hear back from her, so I'm assuming maybe she took that to heart, that it is being looked at. It's not written in stone. And then as far as class sizes go, I was really happy with what I heard at BioJed as far as what the class sizes are this year. And I got to use the bathroom a lot. As a kindergarten teacher, I did find time. So I know you can get to the bathroom.
It can be done.
It can be done, even with kindergarten.
Yeah, and I spoke to this parent and obviously understand their concern and, having kids there and how it's very important, especially when they look forward to coming to school and probably getting the wiggles out or whatever out. And just, I can remember as a kid, it was great. You got there and you got there early, so you could at least have that time. And I think that's something, it's probably unique to BioJed, because I know we're not doing it at the other elementary schools, but I just appreciate that it's being looked at, and that if it's something that can be done at BioJed, is something that's favorable and the survey is done, maybe we can get back to it if it is accomplishable, if it's that important.
So Stan, can I clarify one of those pieces? Because the before school piece is actually happening at Lincoln and Taylor Hicks as well.
On the playground?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I will tell you, I was the first principal to make that move when I was at Taylor Hicks. This was actually something that came out of COVID. During that time when we were social distancing, we did have kids come directly to the classrooms. And just out of necessity, that's what we did. So when it came time for the following school year, when we were lightening restrictions, I brought it to teachers and I said, look, is this something that we want to continue? I've heard good feedback from you. And the teachers at that time were like, we don't love giving up that time, but it makes the start of our day so much better. And so it came to be one of the things that is still happening. And then Lincoln started doing it, and now BioJed. And I will tell you, it made the world of difference, because the playground in the morning with that many children was just unsafe. And there were things happening where kids were getting hurt, or scuffles were happening, or there was conflict, and there wasn't enough staff out there to address all of those properly and to ensure that kids were safe. So what teachers saw by having kind of we called it a soft start in the morning, kids trickled in, they had things to do, they weren't necessarily always sitting at their desk. They could play the games that during class they didn't always have time for. And so kids liked it, it was calm, and by the time that school actually started, kids were ready to learn. So teachers made that choice of, You know, we see the benefits, we've lived through it, and it's stuck all these years. So I'm hopeful that that will be the case. I do know that at Abijah, they swapped duties around too. So it wasn't just adding on this additional duty. They actually removed all of lunch duty for those teachers. So now they have a 40, 45-minute block during the day for lunch, which they didn't have prior. So they did swap some of those out. Again, I agree wholeheartedly that I wish we did not have to do that, but it's the reality of, first of all, making sure our kids are safe and making sure that, you know, we have the appropriate staff out there to do that.
Yeah, all great points.
Well, and I can just say, being 12 years at Taylor Hicks, I mean, it would not be typical, it would be typical that my first hour after school starts is handling things that happen on the playgrounds, which, you know, that was 1/5 of my time that teachers were in the classrooms. It bit into my observation time, my walkthroughs. I was being a manager, not as much of an instructional leader, just because we had 380 kids on the playgrounds and we were trying to keep it safe.
That impacts teachers as
And
well, right? It's not
teachers
just the
and
principal.
Kids are
The
being
principal's
pulled
job's
off
a little
or
harder.
pulled
Okay.
in for interviewing on what happens. They're missing all that instruction. I thought about it at Taylor Hicks. I just didn't have the guts to do it. You know,
Yeah.
took a
I
pandemic to
probably
make
wouldn't
that
have
happen.
either, yeah,
I
if
mean,
it
it
hadn't
really,
been
because
for
of
that.
the reaction that I thought would have happened, but I
And
say
most
kudos.
kids had 3 recess times throughout
Absolutely.
the day in addition to that. So there was a lot more students out on the playground at that time. Their teachers were there, the supervised, or the staff was there who knew them, who could supervise. It was a lot more safe.
As far as the time that they are at having recess duty, how often is that occurring? Like, is it a rotation where they have that once a week, twice a week? Do we know?
They
On
go out
different
with their own
campuses?
kids to morning recess and to afternoon recess. Lunch recess, other folks take care of for them.
Okay, thank you.
And typically what happens is, say second grade is out there at the same time, those teachers go out, but the teachers are great at kind of finding a rotation for each other. So 2 might go take a restroom break while the other 2 are out watching all of the kids, and then they'll swap or trade. So they do a good job of watching out for each other.
Initially, as
I
we're
wasn't sure
getting
how it was set up.
routines established, they're all 4 out there, no question. But as the year goes on, absolutely, there'll be more and more flexibility.
And it really, that came out of, you know, after 2008. It's really resources, like you said, Andy. I mean, our paraprofessionals, by general, probably 90% of our paraprofessionals that we used to have do that, so the teachers didn't. They're all in the special education classrooms, and they're attending to the high needs of the students in those programs. So there's just not bodies. We would have to take the nurse to, you know, there's not bodies to substitute for that supervision.
Well, and this is not an agendized item, and if we want to maybe talk about it further, we could consider putting on an agenda and talk about the teacher satisfaction survey and give us some more information on that and allow the public to come, or teachers to come talk to us or give us their opinion. It's kind of morphed into an agendized, or at least a discussion, and so I think it'd be good to put it on agenda.
Months down the road, I'd like to do.
I'll just make one additional comment. The great parent who brought that to our attention is one of my favorite people. That's not just somebody who's saying, I want this done and walking away. She is there at that school all the time, giving her time and her heart. So I love it. You know, anybody who's got feedback for us, I'm interested. I'm especially interested in feedback from people who are in there doing it with
invested.
us. So I think it's worth this discussion. I appreciate that we're having it.
And it is her wedding anniversary tonight, so that's why
Is
she's
that
not
right?
here,
Okay.
so that's.
Yeah,
let's
great,
just put
great
that.
lady who, I don't share her perspective on a couple of these things. Nothing wrong with that. I love hearing it. And man, I again appreciate what she and other terrific people do to make that
Haley's
school
representing. though.
successful.
Thank you. Thanks for representing.
It's fun. I'm setting her,
Play by play.
Okay, great.
All right, thanks, everybody. All right, moving on to the consent agenda, item 7A. Does anybody have anything to highlight or pull?
I would like to pull 7A2
Okay.
and approve the donations individually, as opposed to part of the consent agenda.
Oh, all right. So we will pull item 7A2. Any other items?
Just a question about 7A8. In the original agenda, I think I had brought
Great,
up.
thank you.
We had originally listed it as Granite Mountain Middle School, but also listed Granite Mountain Upper Elementary School. So wherever we need to make that switch for what's
Good point.
legal at this point,
I didn't see that.
I think.
Sarah, can you clarify where we're at with that?
Yes,
Do you have-
so Mr. Moore has submitted all the paperwork for the official name change to still in pending status. So as soon as we get that finalized or the final word from them, then it hopefully will be officially Granite Mountain Elementary School. But for now, we have to keep documentation as Granite Mountain Middle School on documents.
We all know what school it is. So.
Right,
Yeah.
same school.
I was going to pull the 3 SRO ones just so we could talk about how those are funded. And then we got this beautiful presentation that told us everything of how it was funded. So if the public, I just wanted the public to be aware of how those are funded. And they can rewind and watch earlier and see that
I'll put that in.
it was funded this way.
Can I
That
make a
is
quick
awesome.
comment on that? That's one group of two groups of things that you're looking at on the consent agenda tonight that are just terrific examples of the great partners we have in the city of Prescott. They have been just so good to us and for us over the years, and I think they feel the same way about our partnership with them. We've got a representative from the city tonight. Our new Parks and Rec director is here tonight. Christy Diaz-Trejan, am I getting that right? Perfect. Anyhow, so if you had questions about either of those pieces that are also part of the consent agenda, or maybe I can't remember, they're part of the regular voting agenda. Okay, there you go. Yeah. So when that comes up later, she's here if you have questions, and I'm here, et cetera. But you're totally right, and I really appreciate you mentioning that. And the city has been great to work with us in bringing one of two of the three SROs, as Andy mentioned, you've noted, are paid for out of grant funds that we've worked hard to acquire. One of them has been a cost share, directly funds from the city, directly funds from us, and the city has agreed to bring that more in line with what our neighboring districts are doing and whatnot. I just really appreciate their help there. So that's been a good thing for them and for us.
All right, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda item minus item 7A2.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. All right. Item 7A2, consider approving the donations.
Yes, I would just like to individually thank these organizations. We had one from the Sunrise Lions Foundation for $500 for Discovery Gardens. We had one from the Jewish Community Foundation to Prescott Mile High Grant Cycle for $6,342. We had the James Family Foundation donate a check in the amount of $3,000 for the Prescott Mile High Broadcasting Studio. And we had a donation from Michael Frescone, or Fresconi, do you know? Anybody know how to pronounce it? Fresconi, it's like that. Donation of $800 for the Prescott Mile High Wrestling mats, and those are the ones we had this month. We couldn't do it without them.
That's right. All right. So I'll take a motion to approve the donations as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to 7B, public hearing. Do we have any open call to the public? None? All right. Then we have item 7B1, no, we don't do that. We're moving on to item 7C, studying voting sessions. No public participation in that? Okay. Item 7C1, consider approving the revisions to the 2025-26 budget limits for the maintenance and operation and capital budgets. Mr. Moore.
Just so for, all the people that are watching, it's interesting that we just, adopted and, proposed and then adopted our fiscal year 26 budget, and now we're bringing it back for a revision already. I felt it was important as soon as the budget forms were actually finalized to bring it in front of the board as quickly as we could. Essentially, we adopted and proposed on preliminary forms. Because of the state legislators, they had not, had the budget finalized before we had to adopt our budget. They had to put out the final forms after they recessed. And so these are the final forms. When it came to the tax rates, I adjusted the ADM like I said I was going to do so that bottom line is the same. And we're about 30 students higher projected than we were last year as kind of that buffer in case we get a little bit of a boom of enrollment. The only thing that's different on these is that on page 7, which is a page that kind of outlines our M&O, our maintenance and operation, our salaries, our benefits. What that bottom line is, there's an additional line that was not on the adopted budget, and that it's called state aid supplement. And just so you know what that is I think it was in 2016, Proposition 123 went into effect, in which it did sunset. And part of that proposition was that, and that was out of the lands money. If that expired and was not renewed, that it needed to come out of the general fund until a decision was made on what they were going to do with it. And so there is $246,825 that was not on the adopted budget for our M&O, and that is essentially to take place of that Prop 123 money that sunsetted, and now the general fund is taking over that funding. So anyway, that was not on the adopted budget, but there's $240,000 that's on this that was not before. So any questions other than that? Everything's basically the same except for that one addition.
How was your summer adjusting this with everything up in the air, the federal funding? And were you playing with numbers? And
No, I mean, the budget basically shows spending capacity. I literally could, and unlike all the different funds, I mean, we could put $1 million on all of them. If you don't have the money, you can't spend it.
Sure.
Our budget is really, should be closer to that, but it didn't affect too much. We still put what we anticipated we were going to get, but until you see, the light of their eyes.
Good news.
Yeah, it was good news, and our budgets reflected what ended up being the money that was already allocated by Congress.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Any other questions?
I'm glad it wasn't my first year in this job, because I wouldn't have known what to do. Oh my gosh, preliminary forms, now I gotta do. So anyway, thank you for hearing out what the difference was, and with your vote, we will have our first budget revision for the year.
All right. We'll take a motion to approve the revisions to the 2025 budget limits to the maintenance and operation and capital budgets.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Item 7C2, consideration and possible action to appoint Andy Frere to represent Prescott Unified School District Number 1 as a district delegate to the ASBA Delegate Assembly. Clerk.
Okay. Yeah, so as you know, we're members of the Arizona School Boards Association, and they have a number of events and activities each year that help support boardsmanship and networking and whatnot. Some of you are going to be attending a law conference in early September here, along with me, and I think Andy's one of those folks who's going, and Andy has agreed to represent our board if you are interested in sending him as our district delegate to the, what do they call it? They call it their Congress? There you go, Delegate Assembly, thank you, where they will be, as a group, approving the political advocacy that ASBA will do on behalf of districts throughout Arizona with the legislature and other groups during the course of the year, and I think we'll be voting on that separately. If you've seen what they're proposing for, more money for schools and reining in ESAs and things of that nature. But anyhow, we're asked to have a delegate from our board attend that assembly to say whether we're in favor of that or not. It's usually pretty perfunctory, but it's an important part of our voice as members of the Arizona School Boards Association. Andy, did you have anything you want to add on that?
Not really. I think I kind of fell into this by default at the last annual meeting because our past delegate was not at that, and so somebody needed to step in and be the delegate at that meeting. And I was available and I was there, and I'd taken on another role in leadership with ASBA, so it was easy to just step in and do that.
Things will move forward without us if we don't have a delegate there, but it's not a good look, and I like actively participating if we can as a district, and Andy was kind to do that for us, sort of like you say, last minute last year. In the past, we've had a hard time twisting people's arms to show up for an extra meeting, and he said, I'll do it, I think this is important. So.
And if there is anybody that would rather do this, I'm certainly happy to defer.
right, so we'll do a quick vote.
Can we vote twice?
All right, take a motion to consider, and for consideration of possible action to appoint Andy Frere to represent Prescott Unified School District Number 1 as a district delegate to the Arizona School Boards Association Delegate Assembly.
So moved.
And I will second that.
Motion seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
You're not
congrats,
opposed?
Andy.
I'm not opposed. I'll do
I
that.
know, I figured you'd say. Not opposed.
Item 7.3, C3, Governing Board to discuss and may consider action to approve in whole or in part the draft 2026 political agenda, the Arizona School Boards Association and direct the district's delegate to the ASBA Delegate Assembly to represent the board's determined position. Does that make sense to anybody?
So you've had, I think, the proposed positions for advocacy on behalf of school boards from ASBA in your packet. You've had a chance to look at that. And if you've got questions about any of those pieces or concerns about any of these pieces, now's a good time to talk about that. And then at the end of that discussion, we'll ask you if in whole or in part, you're in favor of Andy going and representing you to share, what your thoughts were about that.
I had a couple questions. The things that are lined out, are they lined out by ASBA? Or is that something we lined out individually?
Question as well.
These were things that districts have expressed concerns about, and so ASBA will go back in and say, let's reword this, kind of like they do with policy. And they will
Okay.
find better wording for
Okay,
that.
so an example of that, and I don't know if Jen picked up on this as well, but they crossed out increased funding for exceptional student services. Does that mean that's gone from this particular?
But it was replaced,
That's
wasn't
what
it?
I was,
Yeah.
I'm assuming it was replaced, but I couldn't quite find it.
It's not really, like,
It's
as
no,
I
it's
read
not.
11 and
through.
12, yeah.
So,
So I'm hearing though, Andy, that doesn't mean that concept is not something they're going to be putting forward, but different wording to express a similar.
right.
Same with
Sentiment.
transportation, the
Right,
very next
exactly.
line.
That's the other one that I had marked
Yeah.
as well.
So my understanding is what this will do is we'll provide ASBA a platform to go to they just hired a new director of government relations. And this will be that person's job is to lobby the state legislature for these items. So if this is something that we feel needs to be included, I think that's a point that should be brought up in this assembly, is that we don't appreciate this being removed, and we need to reconsider adding that back in.
Right.
My guessing, and I'm sorry I don't know more, is with the changes to federal funding that's happening with the education department, there's a lot of potential cuts to special education services and possibly to transportation as well. I know that CTEDs are very concerned about losing funding based on the proposed changes to federal funding for the education department. So my guess is they're trying to do that based off of what they're seeing coming federally towards school districts, but I don't have a solid answer for you on that.
Okay.
I can look into it more though and find out. But if we have concerns as a district, we need to express those concerns.
Yeah, so if there's anything lined out and you're like, man, as a group, we feel that's important to advocate for that as well. That's feedback you want to give Andy and he can
Right.
express in that delegate assembly.
Right.
Right. I had another question regarding Prop 203. That, it's in the one with the bilingual education. Is that the proposition that's been somewhat contentious about full immersion, like that students who are English second language are fully immersed in a English-speaking classroom?
Sarah and I are
Throughout the
going to find
day.
that really quick. I got to
Sorry.
see the context. Very, very probably, but I want to see what the context is.
Because reform English language learners' models of instruction to increase integration of English learners and give schools flexibility and resources to administer them. But I thought the most recent discussions have been around we're too integrated in the sense that some schools have been not keeping kids in their English-speaking classrooms
Right.
full day because they've been doing more of a half and half program.
Right.
And it was voted on by the public that it should be full day. I mean, these are things I
Right.
read, right? But I don't
Right.
know, like, I'm wondering, it sounds like they're maybe going to lobby for reform English language learner models of instructions to increase integration. And yet, I think I was thinking it was the opposite. And so I was just confused.
Yeah, possibly. I don't have the details on this
Okay.
piece, but I can tell you what I am aware of. With Prop 203 has passed, the wording, the current superintendent of schools is interpreting it one way, and
Yeah, that's the
multiple
lawsuit,
school
yeah.
districts have interpreted it a different way. Multiple school districts went ahead with a little bit more integrated approach than Superintendent Horn was comfortable with. He tried to sue directly, was told by the courts he had no standing, so it was thrown out. So he had his wife sue on behalf of some people, and that's also, that has been recently decided on, told that his interpretation, told by the courts, his interpretation was wrong, and the school districts are okay. This may be an effort on the part of ASBA to have that
More clarity,
prop-
okay.
yeah, that proposition done away with and clarified
Mm-hmm.
to meet with what current research models suggest is best. I don't have a lot of direct information about it. The model that we use in PUSD was totally okay with Superintendent Horn. I do know that. What's going on in other districts and how it affects ASBA's recommendation to advocate for a certain point of view on that, I don't have the details on that.
I think some of this also may be removing some that are duplicative in there. So I look at that item about increased funding for exceptional student services. And at the very end of the document, you'll see a note to say fully fund individuals with disabilities education act.
Okay.
Okay.
So as
Oh,
opposed
okay.
to going specifically for that ESS related one,
Oh.
they're just saying fully fund special
Gotcha.
education.
Covered elsewhere.
So there, I'd have to read it line by line to know for sure, but I think there's some double,
Right.
Gotcha.
two of the same things being said, it's just in different ways.
I hadn't picked up on that, but I think that's probably
Yeah,
what's going on.
you're probably right.
So, but I will find out more. I will ask more before we go to vote on this, but if you have, we have a meeting before the law conference, so
We do.
if you have concerns, I'll try to find that before and we can share the concerns, and then as the delegate, I can take that
Okay.
back to ASBA. Great.
So
Yeah.
just email you if we
You-
have a concern with
Yeah.
another particular item in the.
Question or whatever.
Yeah, and I can ask questions.
You have a
one-on-one.
meeting with this group before the law conference?
No, we have a board meeting before the law conference.
Do we?
I think it's on the,
September.
Oh, no, it's
No, the law
after, isn't
conference
it?
is while I'm gone, and we don't have another board meeting
It's
until I'm
after.
it's in the
I think
very
it's-
beginning of September. Let me look at the date. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
Because
law
of the way the
conference is
calendar works.
this week.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah, so if you do have concerns, please send it to me by email so that I can
Okay.
Okay,
forward that.
we
and
can
get
do that.
answers.
Got it.
Yeah.
And some of my concerns are things I just don't know very much about. So it's
Right.
not only that, I'm not necessarily saying, I don't want that on there. I don't know. I don't know what I don't
Right.
know. So some of it I haven't had a chance to research.
So I guess a question then to ask would be, do we vote on this tonight if people are unsure about the document? Or are we comfortable waiting until people ask their questions and then I get a consensus from the board and go forward with that?
That might be a good way
That's what I would
to
rather
word
have.
things.
If that is legal, I'm not sure if we can do that since this is an agendized item.
Yeah. More looking, the motion is to approve in whole or in part of the draft, right? So we can still vote on it, as the delegate, if we decide that that we have concerns, you can bring it as the delegate, but not as an entity.
Okay.
As a board.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense to do that?
I think so.
Okay, good. So you have the power to do so. Okay.
Maybe you do that, maybe just, if you have that level of confidence in Andy, and I certainly would, if it were me, vote to approve whatever pieces of this you're comfortable with tonight, and then, in addition to that, over the course of the month, ask questions, share concerns, and he can get back with you on those, and if there's pieces, say, hey, we voted yes on this, but I'd like you, Andy, to bring this up. You could certainly do that.
Okay,
Right.
sure.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve in whole or in part the draft 2026 political agenda of the Arizona School Boards Association and direct the district's delegate to the ASBA Delegate Assembly to represent the board's determined position.
Okay, I will make that motion.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Item 7C4, consider approving the MOU between PUSD, Granite Mountain Upper Elementary School, and Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University Federal Work-Study Program.
Okay, I'll try to be brief on this. Both C4 and C7C4 and 7C5 are related to each other, so I'll just kind of make comments about both, and then if you've got questions as you vote on them or before you vote on them, let me know. This is super cool. What's been maybe 2 months ago, Kelsey? Embry-Riddle reached out to us and said, we've got a program we started at our Daytona campus in Florida that we're looking to roll out here. We're going to work with the Federal Work-Study Program. There's some federal funding that comes with this, and then Embry-Riddle will be funding some of this. We're going to pay some of our students to act as tutors, and we want to interface with 2 of your elementary schools. And we say, oh, we've got 4. Could you do it? No, we're starting with 2. We might expand to 4 later on. Which are the 2 that you'd like to target and why? And so we reached out to principals. We looked at test scores and areas of need and whatnot, and decided, you know what, the 2 places that we probably need the most to start off with are Lincoln and Granite Mountain. We want to, as far as elementary schools are concerned, and so they've sent us memorandum of understanding. Is not something that always has to go to the board. Very often we'll do that on an administrative level, but I wanted to A, highlight this in public, B, make you aware and give you an opportunity as a group to ask any questions about it, and then C, Embry-Riddle has asked us as well if we could bring it up in this format, in this manner. So we're doing that. IGAs, intergovernmental agreements, we always bring to the board in one form or another, but MOUs, memorandums of understanding, when we're not working with another governmental agreement to do something similar. We sometimes take a different approach, but in this case, we're doing this. The idea is that they'll have a certain number of kids that will have a certain number of hours each week that will come to the schools. And as talking to the principals this morning, they're already starting to schedule what that would look like. They don't know how many kids exactly or which days exactly, but they're looking at their schedules and, oh, this could fit perfectly here. It would look like that. But the first step is to get your approval for us to start partnering with Embry-Riddle in this way. I think it's super cool. We've had some great partnerships with them in the past regarding, you know, their science outreach and field trips there and neat things like that. They've been more intentional about recruiting local kids for scholarships and whatnot recently as well. Their new chancellor, who's terrific, and I have met a couple of different times. He's actually on the Chamber of Commerce board with me, so I get to see him frequently. And he's really into making them a better, more intentional community partner than ever. And a lot of that starts with our schools, our public schools, in his mind. So I'm excited about this. I think it's neat.
It is really neat.
I think it's really great.
Super lucky. All right, any further discussion? All right, take a motion to approve the MOU between PUSD, Granite Mountain Upper Elementary School, and Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University Federal Work-Study Program.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion
We'll both second
and
it.
seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. And then moving into item 7C3, consider approving a MOU between PUSD number 1, Lincoln Elementary, and Embry-Riddle Federal Work-Study Program. Any further discussion on that? Okay, then we'll take a motion to approve the MOU between PUSD, Lincoln Elementary, Embry-Riddle Federal Work-Study Program.
I'm sorry, Stan, can I ask one question before we go to a vote? So a little difference between the upper elementary school and Lincoln, do we have an idea what this tutoring relationship is going to look like at the elementary school as opposed to kind of more, I'm assuming more specific at Granite Mountain, since they'll have math classes, they'll have, you know, how will this look? Will they be in the classroom for periods of time? And
That's my understanding, is they're looking
kind of
initially
parapro-ish?
during our school day,
Okay.
a certain number of students from Embry-Riddle coming in and helping with the tutoring in ways that work with the schedule of the
So-
school. So whether that happens during their win time or
Okay.
whatnot, I don't know that all of that's been worked out quite yet.
Okay. I'm just thinking, is there more opportunity for free time for the students at Granite Mountain as opposed to at Lincoln when they're primarily in classrooms all day? So.
Yeah, but.
If
do
it's
you wanna
during the
speak to that?
school day, we
Yeah.
can be very flexible as far as what that looks like. It could be, a reading buddy who's working outside. They
Okay.
could be working on math facts. They could be, there's a variety of things they could be doing. It'll probably depend on individual student needs and the time that the students
Okay.
are allowed to come.
All right.
But-
We've already got intervention time built in for certain students and for all students during the course of the day. I see this fitting in well to what that structure's already like, but in both cases, the principal said, send us some folks, we'll put them to good use to
Okay.
make sure that we're helping kids.
Okay.
We've used volunteers in that same kind of format for
yeah.
years and years at elementary schools, so they've got plenty
Okay.
for them to work with.
All right, thanks.
They can be reading group moms,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, Jane?
Very exciting. All right, anyone like to make a motion on 7C5?
I'll make that motion.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Item 7C6, consider approving the IGA between PUSD and the City of Prescott for the use of maintenance of certain PUSD properties and city properties. Mr. Tenney.
Okay, super. I think you've got the draft of the IGAs in front of you. Again, I want to underscore, our partnership with the city has been great. We've had an IGA with them, particularly around the use of recreation facilities for years and years, but we went through and kind of tightened it up just a little bit. And typically, if we're just renewing an IGA, it'll be on the consent agenda. In this case, again, we wanted to highlight it. We've changed a couple of things to be more specific about, yes, they say we can use the golf course, and we say they can use our gyms, things like that. So there were a couple of recommendations that were made from principals that Christy was great to say, that's a terrific idea. Let's say not just the high school, but the high school and Mile High, right? That kind of thing. So do you have a couple minutes? Want to share a little bit about your thoughts around this?
Hi, good evening. Thank you. So I'm your new Recreation Services Director for the City of Prescott, and I can tell you that in the last hour, I have learned 3 things. First and foremost, our kids are in great hands. From hearing our SRO program, and then the depth of public safety and school safety and teacher safety, to the onboarding and the level of care and commitment that you're giving to the new teachers and the feedback you're getting from the community. And then also just the way that you all communicate and respect each other and your opinions and collaboration. So to me, our kids are in good hands. Second, I expect our track team to set records this year.
She's well graduated.
She's well beyond that.
No, but she's recognized a fast track, and so
Our girls did
sounds
win
like,
state last year.
did.
just
right there we go. My daughter is a track and field athlete in college now, and so I will be out there. I'll probably volunteer to work some of your meets.
Oh, I
so
love that.
put me on the hook. And last but not least, I realized I'm a math person. I know how to do math, and I'm a person. So thank you so much for that. Anyway, I've been here for 2 months, and I had just the greatest welcoming with Clark and Andy, and talking about collaboration with Recreation Services and the school district, and there's so much continuity there. We serve the same people, the same families, the same kids. And so I just look forward to continued relationships with you. One of the initiatives we're taking on this year is a master plan for Parks and Recreation. The last one that was conducted was in '07, so it's technically an update. But the reason I'm bringing this up is we will be going to the community. The day of the community coming to us on a certain time on a certain day, that just doesn't work anymore. It checks a box, but it doesn't get us to where we need to be. So I'll connect with Andy and Clark in terms of where we can table events and be at some of the a football game, a parents' night, any and above that. We can hear from our families and our kids to make sure that our future planning for Parks and Recreation in this community are being, the voice of our youth and our families is being heard and will be implemented and roll out in terms of long-term recommendations. So with that, please approve the IGA, and I guess I'm done.
You can see why we love Christy already. You know, we've always had a terrific partnership with the city. Joe Baines was at the point for recreation services for years. Great, I just thought it couldn't get better. And I'm thinking, wow, wow. Anybody who makes you feel like you're in as good a hands as we were with Joe Baines, that's pretty special. We're so glad
I'll
you're here.
tell Joe that when I meet with him on Friday that they did better.
We will
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Christy. Yeah, and please, when you're thinking master plan, we're part of that. 100% always have been. Would love to be a part of it.
I love we may be looking at, on the city level, even increased focus on kids and families than we've had in the past, which is pretty neat. Love that.
All right. Well, we'll take a motion to approve the IGA between PUSD and the City of Prescott for the use and maintenance of certain PUSD properties and city properties.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
I will second that.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Item 7C7, consider approving the IGA between PUSD and the City of Prescott for use, operating, and joint programming of the Prescott Community Nature Center.
Okay, super. Another example of our partnership here with the facilities piece. I mean, the city has a total of 1 gym, so they rely on us a bunch for city league volleyball and basketball and whatnot. Instead of charging them, nickel and diming them, and I don't think we have any golf courses in our district. So instead of them charging us, we just have that great partnership, and that's what you just voted on. Here's another example of that. The school district owned the Community Nature Center for years, as you probably know. Sold it to the city many years ago. And for a long time, it was just super lightly used. And I think the city wasn't super satisfied with that. We weren't taking advantage. In the last few years, we have worked with them to jointly hire an outdoor education coordinator, I think there we go. There you go. And Ellen Basher's been doing that. Ellen has presented to you a couple of times. You leave the room feeling like, man, I didn't realize I had as much energy as I did. So, and anyhow, we've shifted to a new person this year. We're super excited about having Casey on board for that, and we're continuing our partnership with the city in that. So this is just kind of an update of that. Actually, what we'd been doing with the city was kind of an extension of the broad IGA that we had, and sort of a handshake piece on the sharing of resources around the Community Nature Center. And we thought, you know what, Christy had a recommendation. Let's not just include it in the broad one, let's have a separate IGA around that. I thought that's a terrific idea. And so she got with her team, drafted this, asked, hey, what tweaks to language do you want? We made a couple recommendations. She said, that's brilliant. And so this is what we've got in front of you to basically keep doing what we've been doing, again, with full city partnership with the district. It benefits them on weekends and other groups coming in on school days, et cetera, to have a person who can oversee that facility and others and bring kids through, and then our kids learn directly from state standards around science, not just science, right? You'd think they're going to go outside and learn about science, and sure they do, but Kelsey as well, right? And there's a lot of intentional pieces around ELA, math, even social studies pieces that are parts of the program that Ellen and her crew developed and that Casey's going to carry forward this year. So pretty neat program.
Which schools are taking advantage of that site?
So right now, all 3 of our elementary schools, Granite Mountain, and then we're working on a different plan. They're starting to develop that for Mile High and the high school. And that's really around exploring opportunities for future careers using outdoor ed or elements within there. So
very cool.
That's just in the beginning stages, but more to come.
It's been largely our 4 elementary schools that have done that, but all of them. It's not just the 2 that happen to be nearby.
Yeah.
All right. Take a motion to approve the IGA between PUSD and the City of Prescott for the use, operating, and joint programming of the Prescott Community Nature Center.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Appreciate it.
You
Pleasure.
can go home now.
Or stayed.
Either way, what works for you?
Item 7CA, consider adopting the proposed changes in the ASB Policy Service Advisory, Volume 37, Number 6 from May 2025. Andy?
All right. So this is, again, a second reading of some proposed policy changes. Just to review what those policy changes are around. One is around cell phone usage or, kind of digital technologies in the schools. One of the things that is included, really I'll say all of these really come from recent legislative changes, but the main kind of factor is putting some limits in what schools can do in terms of limiting cell phone usage in schools. I mentioned last month that the policy recommendation is that we put a limit on it, but we've already done that in our schools. And so this won't be a major change to any of our school sites. We already have limitations on how students are allowed to use it and when they're allowed to use it and things like that. So that's the one on cell phone usage. There's a change on mandatory reporting for child abuse. The biggest changes there really revolve around who's required to be trained in that. As you should have received an email that includes board members now, as well as substitute teachers, and also some requirements about where, kind of how the reporting takes place around school resource officers. They've put some limits on not. You can report it to a school resource officer, but it also has to be reported to basically DCS or the hotline. So some requirements around that. And then the last policy change is around how we kind of change our student or report out our student records, what's allowed in what's called the directory information. And so we've made changes to what we share and what we notify parents and what we can share out in terms of student information. Any questions on any of those
our
three?
schools still have directories?
We got printed directories now. So this directory information is
Right.
actually a legal term for information that might have been years ago included in directory. Here's where the Bergaminis live, here's our address. And
Well, we
phone
used to
number,
have them
whatnot.
for sure. Like,
Yeah.
I remember
all that
that, but-
information is essentially shareable unless a family chooses to opt out. We give people that option when they first enroll with us. But yeah, the definition of what's in directory information has changed slightly under the law, and this policy reflects that.
Do they have to do a public records request to get the directory information, or can anybody just contact the school and ask for contact information?
Yeah, public records would make that available, again, if a family's not chosen to
Right.
opt out of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Typically, if somebody says, hey, can I get a hold of the Bergaminis, what our principals do is they call you, and they say, the Smiths want to get a hold of you, are you comfortable?
Right.
They've shared their contact information, can you get with them, or are you comfortable with us sharing your contact information? If somebody does ask for a public records request of, what families are where, unless people have opted out, that directory information technically can be done. I can't think of a scenario in which anybody in years and years has asked for family information. We'd be real cautious about that.
I have a question, just because I actually did the training that
Yeah.
I
you
did too.
recommended.
Yay.
So,
Out of 10.
yeah, it's kind of, I feel like it's conflicting in the new policy. And I guess in the law, it's conflicting, because it says a report to a school resource officer or a school safety officer does not satisfy the reporting requirements. But then in the next paragraph, it says when a report is received by our school resource officer or school safety officer, they shall immediately notify a law enforcement agency. So whose responsibility is it then? Because in the exam, the one question I missed was
SRO
you should, and
whatever the other one was.
DCS.
And they said, no,
Right.
DCS is wrong, but it says in here, you should report either to DCS or the law
Right.
enforcement agency, so.
So
don't
I
know.
looked at that line too about, my best interpretation of that is that as a school employee, if you're aware of a concern, it shouldn't go directly to a school resource officer.
Or at least
However,
it can't just
Right, right. However, that doesn't mean that a school resource officer may not hear something from a student, from a parent. You know, they're not going to say, oh, nope, sorry, parent, I can't take that information. You need to go somewhere else. They could receive information, and in that situation, they would then report it to their, you know, supervisors.
So they can
whatever.
facilitate our report to the law enforcement agency, basically.
That's my understanding.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
again.
And my understanding too is that we are to report, and our employees are to report to DCS if the child is still in the care and custody of the alleged abuser, versus if they are not in the care and custody, then it should be reported to the police.
Okay.
The DCS only gets involved if the child is still in the care and custody, or other children are in care and custody of the abuser,
Correct.
is what I understand it to be.
Yeah.
We have, what would you say, those of you who've been principals, how many times a year would there be a DCS report from our schools?
More than I want, but
Right.
I mean, 2 or 3
Okay,
at
yeah.
least, probably.
Yeah, I would say
In a year, and in
3 or
every
4
case,
that
we
file on.
encourage the employee to get with the administrator, they talk through it together, make sure that, you know, we're not investigating, we look very carefully at what our policy says, we touch base with the lawyer if we need to, and then we make sure it gets reported to the right folks. If you ever have a similar situation, I'd encourage you to do the same thing. Get a hold of me, we'll talk through it together, we'll make sure we get the right people informed. So you shouldn't have to say, what do I do in this? Let's talk through it. There's always enough time to do that to keep kids safe.
And I guess the other question I would have is with volunteers in our schools that are from outside agencies, so sponsored through the launch pad or something, are they going through this same level of training so they understand their responsibilities as well? Or is someone in the schools explaining to them, you know, you're reporting? I think volunteers understand they're mandatory reporters, but their reporting would always be back to that coordinator at the school, as opposed to now you have to go to a law enforcement agency to report something.
Does it include volunteers?
I'm trying to remember,
School
I'm
personnel,
not confident
including-
under the law that says anybody who comes and volunteers in a school is a mandatory reporter.
Okay.
No, I don't think they are. I don't think a volunteer
It
is.
doesn't look like it reads that way.
No.
I don't think that's the case. Now, you're exactly right. If somebody becomes aware the child may be in danger, they should obviously let somebody know. But under the law, you know, grandma who comes and does a reading group, you know, has whatever. Typically, I would say this, it would be very atypical for only a volunteer to be aware of a potential abuse or neglect situation and know school staff to be. So I wouldn't worry
I
too
think
much about that.
most volunteers would alert staff.
Yeah, we do have
Correct.
some longer-term
Right, like
volunteers, and
go to the teacher
specifically
or
this
whatever.
scenario you're talking about, Andy, where you work with some of our higher risk or higher needs kids, where you might be first person to become aware, and you
Yeah.
probably have some protocols through the launch to let know about that. And if we become aware of it, absolutely, we're gonna take action on that.
I think it might be, I'll bring that up.
Okay?
Because I think that might be a good point of training for that group.
Yeah.
In particular that I know of.
Good.
All right. We'll take a motion to adopt the proposed changes in the ASBA Policy Services Advisory, Volume 37, Number 6, from May 2025.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Item 7C9, consider approving students recommended for early entrance into kindergarten for the 2025-26 school year. Kelsey.
So we did bring this to you in June as well, and we've had 3 new requests since that time. All 3 were screened, 2 qualified for early entrance, and 1 did not. So we're bringing 2 to you tonight for approval.
Questions about that? Well, then we'll take a motion to approve students recommended for early entrance into kindergarten for the 2025-26 school year.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
I love how you even take turns on motions and seconds.
You know, we're very
So
considerate.
Christy just came from a city council meeting where I think there was probably
It was
a
probably
different
not as-
dynamic, and it was clear that she was impressed with the dynamic. I'm going to say that.
I'm interested to read about what happened at the city
Yeah.
council meeting today.
Oh, yeah.
Me too.
We do rock, paper, scissors. You don't see that.
Oh, is it
We're
over here?
We're over here doing it.
Jane kicks my leg.
I didn't know to do that.
All right, so we have, where are we at? 7C10, consider approving the fiscal year 2026 capital plan for the school's facility oversight board. Brian?
In order to be eligible for school facility division money, there's about 6 or 7 things that we have to do annually. One of them is this capital plan, and essentially it's gathering data to get ahead of districts that are growing. We're not one of those. So it asks a whole bunch of things about new developments. It asks about projected ADM, which on that document you'll see it's just 10 years of the same ADM because it's how we budget. It asks about tuition in students, open enrollment students, and essentially what they're trying to do is get an idea of whether or not there's going to be a need for any new school monies. And so it's in front of you to vote on. I will upload it, and we will not be one of those schools or districts.
Any questions on that? All right, we'll take a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 capital plan for the school facilities oversight board.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
It's your turn. No, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. All right, item 7C11, consider approving the following overnight travel requests from the PHS, or from PHS for the 2025-26 fall semester. Clark?
Yeah, so there's a handful of sports tournaments and other opportunities for students coming up. And as you know, when we have an overnight trip plan, we come to the board to ask for your permission to send kids out of town. And if you've got questions about the specifics of any of these, Mr. Neely has decided to be here with us all night long to just for that.
Always
Yeah.
there.
So if you do, he can probably answer better about specifics, but the general policy, as you know, is that we get with you and say, hey, is it okay if the badminton team heads to wherever they're going for that evening? And we've got protocols and policies in place for chaperoning and number of adults to kids and transportation, et cetera. And all of those have been in place for a long time, will continue to be in place. This is asking if we can employ those protocols to send kids for these opportunities.
So can we get a little further explanation on the Flying Feathers tournament? I saw it's under the badminton, so it makes sense. Scratch that one.
He has no information.
Anything?
Do we know where that is
I
off
was
the top of your
curious. I never knew that we used.
No,
No.
I didn't.
Clearly. Yeah, I think that'd be great. I was just going to ask, I wasn't aware that we used Airbnbs occasionally. Do we do that? I didn't realize that for some reason.
Yeah, would you?
Very infrequently.
Infrequently?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super rare, but
Okay.
occasionally teams have used things like that
Okay.
if it's feasible financially, and depending on where they're traveling, sometimes we end up with some really high hotel bills. So they've been
Okay.
creative in that, but it's always very safe and thoughtful
Yeah.
when they decide to do that.
Just curiosity on that one.
I remember wrestling's done that. Like it's not some of the smaller groups that travel too.
Yeah, I would say it's usually a smaller team
smaller
who does that, but it has happened a couple times and seems to work out well, interestingly enough. So.
I think, like I saw the explanation in there, and I think it does make sense, you know, if you've got 15 kids going and you don't want them separated in different hotel rooms that you have to keep track of, then this keeps everybody centrally located, so that's a good.
We always try to be thoughtful about what's going to be the best format
Yeah.
for balancing costs and logistics and keeping kids safe.
Yeah.
Other hotel guests appreciate it as well.
They probably do. Yeah. We don't care as much about that, but that's a good consideration.
That's true. That is a really good point.
Turns out it's Gilbert Flying Feathers, in case you
Flying the 11th annual.
Look at that.
I wonder who came up with that.
I know.
The flying feathers?
Pretty great.
That's pretty great.
I don't know what the trophy is.
It's a-
We got 6
Any
minutes. I wonder
additional
what the-
thoughts or questions?
All right. Well, then we'll take a motion to approve the following overnight travel requests from PHS for the 2025-26 fall semester.
I will make that motion.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second, do I All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay. All right, additional information and discussions. Brian Moore, Chief Financial Officer, has prepared the school board summary budget report for your review.
First one of the year as presented, unless there's questions.
Any questions? All right, moving on to item 7D2, request for future agenda items. I will, definitely would like to talk more about, what was the one that we recess, but maybe give it a few months if that's okay. Kind of just see, because there's gonna be something
They're
in
doing some
December.
evaluation as to
Some
how they're.
evaluation.
Evaluate before
Might we can
Christmas.
wait for that? December?
Yeah.
Okay, just see what comes out of it, so everybody knows.
Yeah, and to be clear, those surveys that we do twice a year, as you know, are generally about the leadership of the school and the culture of the school and whatnot. We don't ask people specifically, is your job hard? The answer is yes. Find me somebody who doesn't think their job's hard. It's hard, absolutely. Teaching jobs are hard, principal jobs are hard, manager jobs are hard, dental jobs are hard, realtor job, everybody's job is hard. So we don't ask that, but we do get that kind of feedback. We have open-ended pieces to that, and we can share with you, all the comments and whatnot. We want to be thoughtful about how we do that. Those surveys are anonymous, but we've not ever given anybody the impression that their comments are going to be read in public. So we want to be thoughtful about, how, if that's exactly what you want, we'll do that and we'll communicate in advance with people. And you want to be thoughtful about if that is what you want, or if you just want that reported to you individually. We could do that. To process, you won't be again to come back and discuss it in a public meeting if you did it that way. So just be thoughtful about what you want. I like your idea of letting things settle in for this year, seeing how it feels, and then people have points of comparison, what we've been doing versus what we are doing, and then it'll give us time for another survey as well. We can certainly report to you on how people are feeling at any of the schools.
Okay. Sound good, everybody? Yes. I think we'll probably be able to introduce our new student reps by the next meeting. So we'll do some interviews and get that done in the next few weeks. So that's exciting. Then our next board meeting is September 9th, and law conference right before that, right?
Convocation.
And convocation is on the 29th. That's right. All right, we'll adjourn.
All right.
Who had 6:57?
On the dot.